Everything you have been told about getting fit is built on one assumption. And that assumption is not just wrong, it is the reason most people never actually change. Stay with this. Because by the end, you will understand something about fitness that the industry has spent decades making sure you never figure out. Don't forget to subscribe, like in this video so that others can benefit the lie that built an industry. There is a version of fitness that has been sold to you since the moment you first became aware that your body was something the world would have opinions about. It has a very specific look, a very specific pace, a very specific vocabulary built around grinding, earning, suffering, and deserving. It lives in transformation photographs taken under specific lighting conditions, in before and after timelines that compress years of biological change into a thumbnail that fits on a phone screen. In the language of results that implies anyone not achieving them is simply not trying hard enough. This version of fitness has built an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually. It has produced gyms on every corner, supplement aisles longer than the produce section, and an endless scroll of content designed to make you feel simultaneously inspired and inadequate. And it has also produced the highest behavioral dropout rate of any health intervention in the industrialized world. The majority of people who begin a structured fitness program abandon it within the first 6 to 8 weeks. Not because they are lazy. Not because they lack the genetic potential to change. But because the program they committed to was designed, consciously or not, around a version of human life that does not actually exist for most people living most lives. That is the lie. Not a specific false claim about a supplement. Not a machine that overpromises. A foundational assumption so deeply embedded in fitness culture that the people it fails never think to question the assumption. They question themselves instead. The assumption is this: that fitness is a destination with a fixed appearance. That it requires a specific minimum investment of daily time, sustained intensity, and visible suffering to be legitimate. That the people who cannot maintain that investment are failing at fitness, rather than recognizing that the investment model was never designed for the life they are actually living. The fitness industry profits from this confusion. Because the person who believes their body is the problem keeps buying solutions. The person who realizes the program was the problem stops buying that program and demands something designed for their reality. Which is exactly why the industry has never been motivated to make that second realization easy to reach. Here is something worth sitting with before we go further. The last time you quit a fitness program, and almost everyone watching this has quit at least one, what story did you tell yourself about why? Most people tell a version of the same story. They say they lost motivation. They say life got in the way. They say they are the kind of person who always starts strong and then falls off. They absorb the failure as a character trait rather than recognizing it as the predictable outcome of following instructions designed for a different life than the one they are actually navigating. That story is the most expensive thing the fitness industry has ever sold. And it was free. The psychology of the quit, the decision to abandon a fitness program, is rarely a single moment of weakness. It is the final conclusion of a prolonged internal negotiation that most people lose, not because they ran out of willpower, but because the gap between what the program required and what their life could actually provide finally closed completely. Picture someone, and this person is genuinely recognizable because versions of them exist in every city, every profession, every demographic, who commits to a 6-day training program. They are motivated. They have done their research. They have bought the right equipment or the gym membership. They have meal prepped on Sunday. They are ready. Week 1 goes well. Week 2, they are managing. Week 3, a child gets sick. A deadline shifts. Sleep drops to 5 hours for 3 consecutive nights. They miss 2 sessions. They feel the guilt immediately, because the culture surrounding them has told them, in explicit and repeated terms, that missing sessions is a moral failure. That the only acceptable response to a missed workout is immediate return to full protocol, no acknowledgement of the circumstances that produced the miss. So they do not adapt the program to their current reality. They do not scale down the sessions or shift the schedule to accommodate what their life is actually demanding of them. They attempt to return to full protocol from a position of depleted sleep, elevated stress, and accumulating guilt, which is physiologically the worst possible state in which to attempt high-output training. The sessions feel terrible. The results feel absent. The internal narrative, the one the industry planted, tells them that people who are serious do not make excuses. So they add the miss to the growing file of evidence that they are simply not a person who can commit to this. And then they stop. What actually happened is precise and worth naming clearly. They were given a tool designed for optimal conditions and expected to use it in conditions that were anything but optimal. When the tool produced a poor result under those conditions, they were taught to blame themselves rather than assess the tool's compatibility with their circumstances. This is not accidental. An industry built around selling solutions to a problem requires that problem to remain unsolved. The most profitable customer is the one who keeps coming back, motivated by a belief that this time, with the right program or the right supplement or the right mindset, they will finally be the person they are trying to become. The fitness industry's most valuable product is not a program. It is the identity of someone who has not yet succeeded. That identity is what drives the purchase. The consistency paradox here is the finding that fitness culture does not know how to monetize, and therefore does not discuss. Research on long-term exercise adherence, not the short-term intention to exercise, but the actual sustained behavior measured across years, consistently identifies one variable above every other as the predictor of who maintains physical fitness throughout their life. Not training intensity. Not program sophistication. Not initial motivation levels or baseline fitness or even the quality of the nutrition surrounding the training. Enjoyment. The people who remain physically active across their lives, not the ones who complete impressive 12-week programs and then return to their previous baseline, but the ones who are genuinely more capable and healthier at 50 than they were at 35, are almost universally doing something they would choose to continue doing even if the aesthetic result were removed from the equation entirely. Something that fits within the honest architecture of their actual daily life without demanding that life be restructured to accommodate it. And this finding creates an implication that fitness culture finds genuinely threatening. The program you will actually sustain for the next decade is almost certainly not the most impressive-looking one. It is not the one that produces the most dramatic transformation photograph. It is the one that fits, honestly, practically, and without requiring the suspension of your real life to maintain. The lie told by the fitness industry is that this is settling. That choosing sustainability over spectacle is choosing mediocrity over ambition. That if the approach is not punishing, it is not producing. The truth, the one supported by the actual behavioral science of long-term physical health, is the exact opposite. Choosing the approach you will still be doing in 10 years is the highest ambition fitness decision available. Choosing the approach that produces the most dramatic 6-week result before collapsing under its own unsustainability is the low ambition decision dressed in the language of high standards. The fitness industry has successfully inverted the relationship between sustainability and seriousness. And millions of people are living inside that inversion, choosing impressive over maintainable, suffering over consistency, and then absorbing the failure when impressive and suffering prove to be exactly as unsustainable as the data predicted they would be. Think about 2 people. The first person trains 6 days a week at high intensity. Their program is sophisticated, their discipline is visible, and for the first 8 weeks their results are undeniable. By week 12, the accumulated fatigue, the schedule conflicts, the social friction, and the psychological cost of maintaining perfect adherence have eroded the practice to the point of abandonment. Within 6 months, they are back to baseline, carrying the additional psychological weight of another failed attempt. The second person trains 3 days a week at moderate intensity, doing something they genuinely find engaging. Their visible progress is slower. Their transformation photograph is less dramatic. But at the 18-month mark, they are still training. At 3 years, the practice is no longer something they maintain through motivation. It has become a behavioral default, as automatic as any other established daily routine. Which of those two people is more fit at year 3? The fitness industry photographs the first person at week 8 and sells the image. The second person's result does not photograph as well, but it is the result that actually changes the health trajectory of a life. What fitness actually is? The fitness industry has defined fitness as an aesthetic, a performance output, a set of measurable physical metrics, body fat percentage, maximum weight lifted, pace per mile, that exist as endpoints rather than as indicators of something more fundamental. These metrics are real. They are not meaningless. But they are measurements of specific outcomes rather than definitions of what fitness actually is at its most essential biological level. Fitness, in the physiological sense that determines longevity, quality of life, and the body's resilience across decades of living, is the capacity of the body's systems to meet the demands placed on them efficiently, adapt to new demands progressively, and recover from those demands without cumulative breakdown. That definition fits an elite athlete. It also fits a 45-year-old who can carry heavy groceries without joint pain, climb 3 flights of stairs without significant breathlessness, maintain the energy required to be present for the people who depend on them, and sustain the physical capability that makes a full life possible rather than the physical limitation that progressively restricts it. Both of those people are fit. Fitness culture recognizes and celebrates only one of them. The consequence of this selective recognition is significant and largely unexamined. Millions of people who are making genuine, measurable improvements to their health, reducing their resting heart rate, improving their insulin sensitivity, building the functional strength that protects their spine and joints, reducing their baseline inflammation, do not identify as fit people. Because their fitness does not look like the fitness they have been shown. So they keep searching for the more dramatic version. The one that will finally produce the result that feels like enough. The one that confirms they are doing it right. And in that search, they frequently abandon the approach that was working for the approach that looks like working. What genuine fitness requires is less marketable than what the industry sells. But it is more achievable, more sustainable, and more consequential for the actual quality of a human life. It requires consistent movement, not any specific kind, not any particular minimum intensity beyond what progressively challenges the current baseline, not any fixed duration beyond what the research identifies as the threshold for meaningful cardiovascular and musculoskeletal adaptation. It requires nutritional adequacy, not perfection, not daily tracking, not the elimination of entire food categories, but the consistent provision of the protein, micronutrients, and whole food diversity that the body's recovery and function systems require. It requires sleep, protected, sufficient, and treated with the biological seriousness it deserves as the primary physiological recovery mechanism available. It requires stress management, not the elimination of stress, which is neither possible nor entirely desirable, but the deliberate daily practices that prevent chronic cortisol elevation from becoming the hormonal default in which every other health behavior operates at reduced effectiveness. And it requires a psychological relationship with physical health that is not governed by guilt, self-punishment, compensatory suffering, or the binary of perfect adherence versus complete failure. None of those requirements are particularly dramatic. None of them will anchor a supplement campaign. None of them produce the kind of content that generates millions of views in the first 24 hours. But they produce something more valuable than views. They produce a body that works for decades. A relationship with physical health that does not depend on peak motivation, perfect scheduling, or the temporary suspension of every competing life demand to sustain. A fitness that belongs to the life rather than competing with it. The permission nobody gave you. There is something that nobody in the commercial fitness space has been motivated to give you. Because providing it would reduce the purchase of every product designed to fill the void its absence creates. The permission to define your fitness in the terms of your actual life. The permission to count the 30-minute walk you took during your lunch break as real, legitimate, physiologically meaningful exercise. Because it is. The research on walking and cardiovascular health, insulin sensitivity, cortisol regulation, and longevity outcomes makes this unambiguous, and the fitness culture that dismisses it as insufficient is not disagreeing with the science. It is protecting a business model built on the idea that what you are already able to do is never enough. The permission to build a training routine around what you will actually show up for consistently rather than what would theoretically be optimal if your schedule, energy levels, family demands, and recovery capacity were unlimited and permanently stable. The permission to measure your progress in how your body feels and functions, in the energy you carry through the afternoon, in the physical tasks that have become easier, in the health markers that have quietly shifted in the direction of longevity, rather than exclusively in how closely your appearance approximates the aesthetic standard that fitness culture established using representatives whose genetics, time availability, and pharmaceutical support most people are not working with. The permission to build your fitness around your life rather than building your life around a fitness program that was designed for a version of human existence that does not include your actual responsibilities, your actual sleep schedule, your actual stress load, and your actual relationship with your own body. This is not permission to be sedentary. It is not permission to avoid all challenge or dismiss the genuine value of progressive physical demand. The body adapts to what is asked of it, and asking more of it, progressively and consistently, produces real biological change. That principle is not the lie. The lie is the narrow prescription of what asking more is supposed to look like. The insistence that it must be intense, visible, structured, and suffered through publicly to be legitimate. Your fitness does not need an audience. It does not need a particular aesthetic outcome by a particular timeline. It needs to be real, consistent, and compatible with the life you are actually living. The program that produces the most impressive transformation photograph and the program that produces the most meaningful improvement to the health and capability of your actual life are often not the same program. Choose the second one. Not because it is easier. Sustainable fitness is not easier than unsustainable fitness, it simply distributes its demands across time in a way that a real human life can accommodate. Choose it because it is the one that will still be working when the dramatic version has collapsed for the third time. Conclusion: the biggest lie in fitness is not about a product. It is about a standard. The implicit claim that there is one correct version of physical transformation, one pace, one intensity, one aesthetic destination, and that the people who cannot meet it are failing rather than following instructions designed for a different life than the one they are actually living. You are not failing fitness. You have been given a framework built for an idealized version of human existence, one with unlimited time, unlimited recovery, unlimited motivational resources, and no competing demands. And when your actual human life, with its illness and exhaustion and deadline and grief and love and complexity, made that framework unsustainable, you were handed the blame for the incompatibility. That ends here. The framework built for your life is simpler and less dramatic than what the industry sells. It is built around consistency rather than intensity, sustainability rather than spectacle, and the honest assessment of what you will actually do rather than the aspirational projection of what you wish your life looked like. Move consistently, in ways that challenge you and that you will continue choosing. Eat in a way that nourishes rather than punishes. Sleep as though the quality of every other health behavior depends on it, because it does. Manage the stress that your biology was never designed to absorb chronically. Build a relationship with your physical health that you do not need to restart every January. One that bends rather than breaks when life does what life always does. That is the version of fitness that quietly transforms lives. Not in 8 weeks. Across years and decades, without requiring you to sacrifice the rest of your existence to maintain it. You always had the capacity. The framework you were given just was not built for you. Now build one that is. Production notes: pacing. The opening section carries the longest pauses of the entire script. Allow the hook and the early industry critique to breathe. The psychology of the quit section benefits from a slightly slower, more empathetic pace. This is where the audience should feel genuinely recognized. The consistency paradox section builds energy progressively. The permission section returns to the slowest, most personal pacing. The conclusion is delivered at the script's most deliberate tempo. Every line earns its space. Music. Open in complete silence for 3 seconds. Build a barely perceptible ambient tension through the industry critique and psychology sections. Brief musical pause at each major transition. Shift to warmer, more resolved ambient through the permission and conclusion sections. Music fades almost completely for the final 30 seconds. The words carry the emotional weight alone. Visuals. The visual contrast between commercial fitness culture, gym equipment rows, transformation content, aggressive social media training footage, and genuine human movement in real-life contexts is the visual spine of this script. Every cut between those two worlds reinforces the central argument without requiring the narration to state it explicitly. Clean, minimal text graphics for the key reframe moments. The conclusion should hold on a single, simple, uncluttered visual that matches the clarity of the message. Emphasis. The most important lines, the consistency paradox revelation, the permission statements, the final conclusion, should be delivered at the slowest pace and with the most deliberate vocal weight. Counterintuitive as an emphasis technique, but psychologically the deceleration and gravity of delivery signals significance more powerfully than increased speed or volume. The fitness industry's business model depends on one specific belief remaining intact. The belief that you are the problem. This video exists to show you precisely why that belief is the product, and who profits from you holding it. There are people who have never completed a structured fitness program who have been consistently physically active for 20 years. And there are people who have completed over a dozen programs who are less healthy than when they started the first one. The difference between them is not discipline or genetics. It is something far more interesting, and far more actionable. Every fitness program you have ever abandoned was not abandoned because you quit. It was abandoned because at a specific point, the cost of continuing exceeded every resource your life had available to spend on it. This video is about why that is the program's design failure, not yours, and what a program built around your actual existence looks like instead.